All right, so this video is going to be talking about terrestrial biomes, and I will warn you, it's probably one of the slightly longer ones. I decided not to break it in half. I was thinking about it, but what I want you to realize, I'm going to go fast on this, and I want you to I'm going to give you kind of the highlights on what I want. I'm going to give you some examples of plants and animals, and I don't expect you to know them all. But I would know examples. And one of the things I like to do with this is I might ask you to give me two animals that belong to the biome, or give me a couple of plants that belong to the biome. And I might give you 7 or 8 examples. Or I might be asking a question where I'm asking you about what biome are you in? And maybe I give you a list of some of those animals. So if you recognize a couple of them, that would be helpful. All right, so here are some of the terrestrial biomes out there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through these, and we've got a couple of maybe slightly different names to some of them, but we're going to give you examples, and I'm going to kind of point out what I want you. There's more on the slide, but I'm going to point out really what I want you to kind of key into. Okay, so again, when we talked about terrestrial biomes, we really talked about temperature and precipitation. So here you can see kind of a breakdown, some kind of Venn diagram or concept map idea of what you would find there. And you can see that obviously there's some overlap, there's some micro climates that might be occurring, and or some of it could have just been changes in temperature and climate over time. And so anyway, so here's kind of the big picture, and we'll go through that. So we're going to be looking at maybe temperatures, maybe rainfall on lots of these, not maybe all of them, but then also what you would find there. So here are the different types of biomes we'll be going over. I have tropical forests, and you can see I have 3 different listed. We're not going to break those down into the 3 because for time, but I just want you to be aware that tropical rainforests aren't all rainforests. There are some deciduous rainforests that get a little bit less rain, and there's some even thorn forests that are actually even a little bit drier. But again, they get more rain than we do here, obviously. So I just want you to be aware that when we say tropical forests, there's multiple types, and then you can see the rest of them. We'll be going through them. Okay, so tropical rainforest. What you want to know on this is tons of rain. 80 to 160 inches. You probably key into that. The other thing you want to key in that we'll talk about a bit later are layers. Depending on who you talk to, a tropical rainforest will have up to 6. I've even heard some people now saying 8 layers of vegetation or habitats. I think 6 is probably the best number. The other thing you need to know is temperature is pretty steady. It doesn't get too cold, doesn't get too warm. And so lots and lots of different plants. So here are some examples of, there's a tree on the left-hand side, and I don't know the species of the tree, but what you're seeing is it has what's called buttress roots. That's an architectural term also, and it's for support. What you need to know is in the rainforest, although these trees are huge, their root structure is not. It'll be more spread out maybe, but it doesn't have to go so deep. They don't have to go for water. Water's everywhere, but what they do need to do is for support. So you'll see these big, huge buttress roots. The guy there's probably, about 6 feet or so. So all of this going up here, this is all root tissue. I'm showing you this picture because you see a lot of what we call epiphytes. These are plants that grow on other plants. This is a bromelid. You might see that up in the trees. And then this is a, why am I blanking on what that is? That is it's a plant. It'll come to me. So anyway, we have them in the house. I just blanked. Okay, so let's look at some other some animals that are in there, and there are tons and tons. This is where over 50% of all the species are that live there, that live on the planet, are in the tropical rainforest. So we have lots of different snakes and reptiles. The warm temperature does well for them. This is actually, it's not a great picture, but this is a harpy eagle. This is the largest eagle in the world. These guys could actually, their strength is they could crush your arm. They can carry small deer. It's probably the biggest thing they can pick up. And actually, it's hard to tell, but it's sitting actually on a sloth. That is actually a sloth. That's one of these guys. So two-toed, three-toed sloths out there. This is a little primate. This is actually a golden lion tamarin. So there are primates down there. And then this is a leopard. And this is the Fruit Loops bird, Toco toucan. So lots of different species. I just picked a few. All right, the next one is the savannas. And what you want to know, there are savannas and grasslands. And for you, I want you to key in is it really comes down to the amount of rain. They have a long dry season, and then they have a very wet summer. The rain is important because there's enough rain to support some trees, but not a lot. But you're not going to get a forest, but you are going to get some trees, whereas grasslands are usually a bit drier and there's not even enough moisture to support any trees. So that's kind of the key difference between those. So for savannas, what you're going to get is some obviously, I want you to know grasses with different trees. And you can see that, these trees can be different. These trees, you can see, have these swollen areas, and this is due to water retention, trying to hold on to water. But these are what your typical savannas would look like. These trees that are thin on the bottom. And again, now you can argue, and I guess the other thing I got to make sure you understand is these animals don't just stay in one or the other. They can obviously go into the grasslands and stuff. But here are, this is the savannas of Africa. And so we got your major species, you got a giraffe, and we got gazelles, an African lion, zebras, African elephants, and a cheetah on the bottom right. So these are all the animals that you would find in the savannah. The temperate grasslands. Okay, so the temperature is going to be a little bit different. Again, they have grasses, flowers, herbs. Sometimes those are called forbs, F-O-R-B-S. I use that term later. So there might be a tree or two, but again, really the difference between this one and the last one is the lack of trees. And so it really comes down to soil and then some of the microclimates we talk about. And so a grassland would probably have a little more erratic in how they get the rainfall compared to a savanna. And then obviously, again, grasses and forbs. Forbs is a term we use for small annual plants, or I guess they could be perennial, which means multiple years, but they don't grow very tall. And so there's all kinds of different ones. I just pick some pictures, but these are some of the bigger grasses. That's called pampas grass. This is from Argentina. So I just want to make sure you understand that when we call them grasses, they can get pretty good size. All right, and again, these could be technically in they overlap, but on the left we have a badger on the top left. In the middle, we have a fox. This would be a kit fox, which is an endangered species here in California. On the right, we have a pronghorn, which is another animal from a faraway place you've never heard of, is Central California. And they go all the way up into Montana, Wyoming. Over on the left is not a buffalo. It is an American bison. In the cattle family, but we do not have buffalo here in the United States. And then on the right is prairie dogs, found on the grasslands of prairies. All right, so deserts. What you want to link in for deserts is less than 10 inches a year. We have hot deserts where the precipitation comes down in the form of rain, and then we also have cold deserts where the Great Basin deserts up north are cold deserts that typically most of the precipitation is in the form of snow. And So deserts have these huge extremes, you know, and I've given you pictures here because this is our local deserts. These are Joshua trees. Here's a desert out in Arizona and with the saguaro cactus. Can't actually tell that's a saguaro, I guess. It's probably not the best picture of it. I think I have it on the next slide. But, you know, a lot of people think of deserts as these big sandy oases like these. And reality is that's not probably, you know, we do have those, but often our deserts look more like this, where there's high diversity because of the extreme climate and things have to adapt to survive out there. So for plants, over on the left is Encelia, that is brittle bush. It's a common species. You actually, as you drive out the 10 freeway, they plant it on the side. It does well in the heat. On the right is one of our local species, and that's not a great picture, but it's called creosote. That's a species of plant that kind of dominates both our local deserts. Maybe not dominate, but at least they're constantly. On the bottom left is our Joshua tree, and then we have beaver tail cactus, the one in the middle, which is kind of our local cactus here too. And then on the right would be the saguaro cactus, found more in Arizona. There are places in California I think they've shown up, but whether those are planted or not, I don't know. All right, so lots of desert species. Up on the top left is a Gila monster, one of the 3 venomous lizards. Then we have a venomous snake, we have a rattlesnake, and on the very bottom of the left is our desert tortoise. Up on the top right is a bighorn sheep. We have a cactus wren in the middle, and then on the bottom right we have a peccary, which is actually not a sometimes called a javelina, but that is actually not a pig. It is not in the pig family. On the bottom middle is the kangaroo rat, and the one in the middle is an African species. It's an Arabian oryx, one of the most endangered species on the planet for a while, but they are making a comeback thanks to conservation. All right, moving in, chaparral, and I'm gonna. This is a little tough for me. What you're going to find in a book is they call it chaparral. And we're in Southern California. We don't actually call all chaparral chaparral. So what you need to know is in most books, and actually even though Campbell is from Southern California, he wrote chaparral as chaparral, but there's a hard chaparral and a soft chaparral. So the rest of the United States will basically call it the 2 different types. Our hard chaparral is up in the mountains, and we tend in California just to call that chaparral. The soft chaparral is actually what we live in, and that would be called coastal sage scrub, because that coastal sage is the dominant species of plant. So we're a Mediterranean climate, hot and dry. And cold winters. So this picture that they call chaparral in California, this would be soft chaparral. This would be our coastal sage scrub. And then if you go higher up, this is more what chaparral, hard chaparral would look like. More bigger bushes, thicker branches. Yeah, so this one up here, this is manzanita. That would be a good example. You drive up the mountains, you see the red bark on that. This would be manzanita. We have things like mountain lilac, and we have chamise. These are different species of plants. Coastal sage scrub, on the other hand, has lots of sages in it. They're also very similar to what you saw before. Both of these, chaparral and coastal sage scrub, are known for burning, and they're known to catch fire. They're actually built for fire. They build up fuel, which then allows it to burn. The idea is that it should be burned every 5 to 10 years, and it will quickly go through the fuel. The fire will move quickly, and there will not be a lot of damage, because what happens is days afterwards, you'll get resprouting. The problem is because we have so much fuel buildup, because we don't allow fires, what we're ending up with is these very hot, intense fires that pretty much kill just about everything. So we have destroyed the fire cycle because Smokey the Bear tells us that fire is bad. All right, so some of the animals, and I'm going to give you the animals and they share because, you know, you see them in both areas. So up on the left is the coyote. That is kind of the top predator. In the middle, we have one of the two lizards you'll see. This is not the one you see mostly, which is the western fence lizard. This is actually an alligator lizard, which are around here, maybe not quite as common. In the middle is the California quail, which is our state bird. The right is our California roadrunner. Our greater roadrunner is really technically the name. And then we have on the bottom left is a striped skunk. And on the bottom right, we have a bobcat. So some of the chaparral species. All right, temperate deciduous forests. These are deciduous means leaf falling. So broadleaf forest, another name. This is really kind of in the United States, it is back east. Average temperature just for is about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And they get 30 to 60 inches of rain a year. So quite a bit more than we do. And then in the wintertime, they lose their leaves. These are the places you want to go, you know, for the fall change, things like Connecticut and Vermont, and where they have beautiful falls. But you have to live through snow and hot, muggy summer. So I'm not sure that's worth it. But anyway, so you want to think for forests, it's really just, there's all kinds of different, there's birches, maples, aspens, ashes, the American beech, that's this species on the right here. That would be a beech. Even there are oak trees, which most of ours are here are evergreen. They don't lose their leaves. The ones back east, a lot of them will. So lots of different variations of these larger trees that lose their leaves. And again, lots of different species. Up on the top left is a beaver, and we got a red squirrel on the top, very different than the ones we have here. One of the squirrels from back east is showing up here called the fox squirrel. In the middle there, we have a little chipmunk, American chipmunk. On the right, we have a white-tailed deer. Our deer here are called mule deer or black-tailed deer, but we have on the left a brown bear. You can find black bears here also. Then we have raccoons, and then even a little salamander over here. All right, a couple more areas. Taiga. This is a coniferous forest. This is the ones with pine trees and things that have needles or scales for leaves. And it's one of the largest continuous biomes. I will tell you the taiga is very cold with pretty much just snowfall. And then the summers are warm, rainy, and humid. And so again, we're really looking at pine trees. So the diversity, they have lots and lots of trees, but the diversity may be limited. Another name for these are boreal forests. So quite a few different names for this. And again, what we're looking at pine trees or, you know, conifers, things like fir trees, anything that have cones, basically. These are the ones that have cones. They're called gymnosperms. We'll do that with the taxidermy. And so animals you'll find there on the left is an Arctic hare. On the bottom left is a wolf. We have a gray owl sitting there in the middle. And this is also known for mosquitoes, lots of mosquitoes in this area. On the top right looks like a badger on steroids. That's actually a wolverine. And then on the bottom right, which kind of looks like a bobcat, but this is a close relative, which is a lynx. And then the last terrestrial one is the tundra. And tundra means barren land. What I want you to key into this, and where is it? Yeah. Permafrost. You see permanently frozen ground. So you're not going to get any trees. They have a very small growing season. And so nothing gets really big. So you have mosses, heath, lichen, very, very low to the ground plants. And they have periods of long, you know, nothing but sunlight or nothing but darkness. And the key word is permafrost. So what that does, what that means is that you will get this frozen area. And then when the top starts to melt, the bottom below it is still frozen, which kind of holds it, makes the ground very, very soggy and wet. And then with the tundra, you'll get polar bear. There's a snowy owl in the middle, an Arctic fox on the right. And then in the middle, we have caribou. Common name would be a reindeer for the domesticated ones. And then we have penguins on the bottom right. And then we have our northern version of this. This would be actually a puffin. And so, again, those are the biomes. So hopefully we did not go too fast.